Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling, maybe. Hello, and welcome everybody to today's Attributed session. Today with me, we have Peter Walker, which I'm really looking forward to talk with, because I was talking with Dave Kellogg a few weeks back, and he said, you know what, Peter Walker is probably the best data storytelling guy out there in B2B. And that got me thinking, okay, sounds like somebody I should be speaking to, because we try to tell a lot of stories with the benchmarks at Dreamdata, and I had, of course, seen a few of these Carta slide as the Carta images flowing around LinkedIn, but I hadn't really dived deep into that kind of whole ecosystem of data stories that you guys tell. And when somebody like Dave Kellogg says it, it's probably quite true that there's a lot of quality around here. So, Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to take me down your job and around telling stories with data at Carta. But like for people who've never met you, Peter, what's the typical introduction to yourself?
Well, thanks for having me on. Dave is too nice, but hopefully we try to live up to those expectations. So my day to day, or if you want to kind of get into a sense of what I'm doing, the Carta is, to take a step back, Carta is an equity management and fund platform. So we have about 60,000 startups that use us for cap table management, meaning they can issue equity to their employees, to their advisors, investors, anyone that they want to share ownership with. And then laddered onto that is a complete back-end office effectively for venture funds. So we have both founders on the platform and investors on the platform. And that obviously spawns a ton of data around what these people are doing, what's going on in the startup market, how people are fundraising, et cetera. Lots and lots of useful information for founders and for investors. And so my job is to create the stories out of that data, the big reports, the small social graphics, anything and everything in between, and sort of give it back to the ecosystem in the form of content, so that hopefully, of course, this inspires a lot of love for Carta, but also just to be helpful and make sure that everyone is working off of a shared set of reality, because it's pretty hard to find good data on startups a lot of the time. So that's in a nutshell what I do and who I do it for.
And did you do data storytelling before you arrived at Carta, or was this kind of learning on the job here at Carta?
No, so I actually pitched this role to Carta. It wasn't like an open job or
Oh,
anything,
really?
because I had been doing a kind of similar thing at the Atlantic magazine for during the COVID period, where
Oh,
tons
yeah.
of data, lots and lots of stories to be told from that data, and obviously in the beginning of COVID, a lot of misinformation, a lot of lack of understanding about how diseases worked in this case, and all this kind of stuff. So it was like my second job. I was working at a startup, and then I had a second job at the Atlantic, kind of running the data viz around COVID, and that's where the idea really came from. And then I was looking for data sets that were big enough and interesting enough to do this with, and Carta was number one on that list. So kind of kind of pushed my way in a way.
That's fantastic. I'm just sitting and wondering now whether I actually saw some of those Atlantic COVID
You
graphs. If
might
I
have. Yeah,
probably,
yeah, they were pretty, we got a quite a wide reach back in the day. Yeah.
that's fantastic. So I guess, like, if we start with why kind of this telling stories with data? Why is that popular, I should say, an effective way to kind of do marketing?
For sure. I think it boils down to like two main reasons. One, everyone is spouting claims, especially in the AI era. Everyone is spouting claims that are either completely evidence less, they don't have anything backing them up, or it just kind of seems like they're making wild assumptions off of a tiny little set of numbers. So if you have a proprietary data set, it gives you the advantage of being able to speak with evidence about something that's important to your audience. So that's number one. Number two, you just don't have to talk about yourselves all the time. So much marketing is buy us, here's why we're better, blah, 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 blah. Data, especially data done the way that we think it should be at here at Carta, it's a reason to speak to your customers and prospects about their world, not about your place in their world. And that just kind of lends this air of source of truth, of credibility that you don't get in a lot of other ways. So I have an amazing job because I am not held to any lead targets ever. I'm not trying to sell anyone. I'm just trying to help you make better decisions using Carta data. And because I'm doing that, I actually become a better salesperson, right? I'm a more effective channel for Carta than if I was just here trying to sell you on cap table every moment of the day. So I think that those two kind of work hand in hand as to why this is a useful motion.
Already dropped a few fantastic quotes right there, Peter. Thank you. I think it's so true that kind of there's a limited amount of times you can say, book that demo, buy my product.
Yeah.
But the truth is that I think like we just released a benchmark last week that the customer journey on average amongst our customers is 272 days now.
Wow.
You can't say buy my product for 272 days
Right. Exactly.
while you still want to remain top of mind with these people. LinkedIn calls it like this 95 5 rule or whatever the
Yep.
of
Yep.
like 5% are some degree of in market and 95% are not in market.
Yeah.
But those 95% are the people you want to call you once that they have the time, what is the band like budget, authority, need,
Mhm.
timing, whatever. But you can't just show them product features all the time. So benchmarks and like other data-driven stories are a great way to show them that you know what's up
Yeah.
in your industry still.
Yeah. Yeah. Like becoming the source of truth for people that are not in market who just, live and breathe the work that you do every day. And then eventually, a year from now, 6 months from now, whenever it is, they look up and they go, oh, you know what? We actually do need cap table. Like you're the only brand that even comes to mind because
Yeah.
they've been reading so much of your stuff. They've actually found value in it. They've discussed it with their employees or with their investors already. And so there's a huge advantage to just capturing the not in market mind share. And I think data does that. You can make it you're not always striving to find a new angle. I mean, you can print 1,000 new things with the data, but the data itself is like a system that you get to work with. So in some ways, it sounds like it might be harder to do the data stuff, but I think it's actually almost easier because at least I have evidence to work off of, and my job is to craft it into compelling stories rather than trying to imagine a net new thing every couple months to keep people interested.
Yeah, that's so true. Um, if companies, I was just wondering if we could do some advice for.
Yeah, let's
So
do it.
we've kind of bought into kind of we know that this is a good way, but
Yeah,
if you're a company who's not producing data stories or benchmarks or anything like that right now,
yeah, yeah.
what are the questions that they should be asking themselves to spot potential for doing so?
Yeah. First question is about your data asset. So, what proprietary data do we have access to? How do we have access to use it? Are there any, tripwires that we have with customer privacy or other things that we need to be aware of? So that's obviously first things you get all that squared away. Like for instance, Carta has it's written into our master services agreement that we can use this data in aggregated and anonymized ways. We would
Mm,
never reveal any private company information down to the individual company. But if we aggregate it to an industry wide, we can use it in a whole host of ways. So that's first. The thing that many founders will come back and say is like, okay, I get it. It's cool for Carta, but we don't have enough data,
mm,
right? We're not big enough. We don't have enough. My push on that is usually that's not true, especially if you are in certain kinds of businesses. Fintech lends itself to this really, really well, et cetera, et cetera. But very often, any company of a significant size will have a data asset that is worth exploring at least somewhat. So
Mm,
I would push people to be maybe a little more creative there. If you're right and you don't have enough data, you can still run this motion just using a little bit of your data and a lot of other people's other public information. I
yeah,
think um, there's so much room for to be a curator of information in your industry. Uh, there's so many, most people are not going to read the academic research. Most people are not going to read the big McKinsey reports. Most people are not going to read the consulting, whatever. You can read them, you can synthesize them, like put a little bit of your own spin on it, and then put it out as interesting information. I think that's also useful. So that's step one. Look at your data asset, and then step two is mine it. Create the narratives, create the graphics, create the stories, etc. That's the whole job. And that's where people, I guess, before we jump into the first thing, if you're a founder listening to this, or if you're a marketer trying to get backing for it, you need to have the founder or the executive team on board for this being a 6 to 9 month journey. If they're just like, hey, produce some stories and like hope it hits the first time, and then we're not going to pull the plug, that's not going to work.
yeah,
This takes a while. So it has to really be a buy-in from everybody on the team before you get started.
yeah. And that's also like actually, as you said just before that, if you start from scratch, maybe you need to write it into all new client
Yep.
contract.
Yep.
We have that in our contracts as well. But if we didn't have it there, we would we would not be allowed to aggregate this in a generalized form. And
Totally.
then some accounts opt out of it, and that's just fine. But
That's okay.
as
Yep.
a starting point, yeah, you actually have access to the data.
Yep.
I was just thinking, I have I have a friend who really pulled off a great data story. Essentially he's running an affiliate site called Run Repeat, where he's like reviewing shoes, but he started out with running shoes,
Yep.
and pulled data on. I can't in marathon, is it like Big Six or Big Five or something, like global marathon races
Mm-hmm.
for the last 30 years, and he found out that men on average ran um, worse than women, or timed their races worse. So you have marathon running, you have like negative splits where like you run the first part
Yep.
slower than you run the second part, but men sucked at that. And that's
Yeah.
a great story, and it got picked up by New York Times, Washington Post, etc., because it's so interesting that the male ambition on their own behalf doesn't really match the training that you had
Right.
in performance. I
Yeah.
think you can think about any whatever industry you're in, try to find something that is like generalizable or
Yeah.
interesting for everyone to follow along with.
And that's maybe one of the things that comes into the how do you get the sort of raw materials for this? Obviously, having the data and all this kind of stuff is important. But if you're not curious about your own industry, then whatever you write is going to be bad. So like my team at Carta is now, it was just me for a couple years, and now there's three of us. It's me and my two wonderful colleagues on insights. The number one thing that I'm looking for in an insights person is someone who deeply cares about the industry. They're reading the right newsletters, they're following the right social follows, et cetera, already. I can't teach them to be curious about startups. I can teach them data and I can teach them storytelling, but I can't teach them curiosity. And that's the number one thing if you're going to hire for this role, for instance, or if you're thinking about like adding it to your mix of marketing, like you just have to be in the conversation of whatever industry you're in. It's easier in startups because everyone's always talking, like startups are so loud, but for your industry, that might not be on X. It might live other places.
It's so funny that is so true, because the data, the numbers will change here on no, like I'm trying to think, like you have to be able to go from you're looking at some data to why is this actually interesting for our industry.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
1 year ChatGPT did occupy any website traffic. The next year, it takes up 1% of the traffic. And why is this super duper interesting
Right.
if you're a
Yeah.
B2B marketer, for example?
Exactly. Yeah. No,
That
it's a great point.
okay. Yeah. How do you guys then work to? Or how does a story maybe? How does a story then get created?
Mm.
does the question come first, or does the data come first, or like kind of how do you guys go about producing news stories?
Yeah, it's both. Look, there's if you are running a business of any significant scale, you're gonna have a ton of people asking you questions all the time. It might not be you, it might be your sales folks, it might be your customer success folks, it might be the founder, whoever. But if you're in the flow of conversation amongst your prospects and customers, you're gonna get a lot of questions. Some of those questions will be about your product, but a lot of those questions will just be about the broader industry and the world. Like it is, you have to be tracking those questions first and foremost. When I first got into Carta, they already had a list of like people have asked us, how to can you go find this thing for me? You should know this. And so that was an easy place to get started. Um, the real key here is that not every part of your insights practice is going to be driven off of a customer question, and not every part of it should be designed to, you know, go into a massive report that you release once a year. Everyone does the state of blank. We do a lot of state of blank, state of startup, state of pre-seed, state of whatever. Um, those are useful. Those are nice. To be honest, there most people try to start with that, and it's the exact opposite of what you should do. You should start with one chart that looks good, and then you should put that chart out on social. Stop trying to build a big report up front. You can waste a lot of time and get no downloads and just have kind of thrown away a couple months doing that. Whereas if the goal of what you're doing is to produce one good looking chart, we call this the atomic unit of the work. The atomic unit of our work is one chart.
Yeah.
Everything that we build should be releasable on public if we wanted to. And then you just get so many more reps. You get so much better releasing 2 or 3 times a week than you would building a big report and like fingers crossed it hits. Plus, then from the feedback from your audience, what are the topics that they're actually most interested in. So
That's a great
it's like,
one, Peter. Rather than don't set out to build a huge report, just try out graphs and see kind of what people digs.
yeah. And it's look, there's a lot of back and forth. The advantage, and people will look on my LinkedIn now and be like, I have a decent following. At the beginning, you have no one, right? Nobody's following. No one's reading your stuff, which is great. It's actually a good thing because you can just try a bunch of things and nobody saw it the first time. So if it didn't work, no worries. You have another shot tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you can rewrite the headline, you can redo the graphic, you can try a different topic entirely. And you very quickly start to dial into like, what is my writing style? What are the graphics that really work? All those kinds of stuff. It's a real interesting kind of reversal from my goal is not to build big and interesting things. My goal is to build one unit that gets me a little bit of attention and then ladder up those units into bigger reports, newsletters, podcasts, whatever like the channels are that you're going to be working with.
Oh, that's a very interesting avenue to go down as well. So it sounds like you do like multiple graphs on an average week, like 1, 2, 3 times, right?
I post every day actually these days. I
Yeah.
don't think you need to. I really don't think it's required in any way to post every day.
Yeah.
Um, I have a lot of charts. So at this point, I think I can.
Yeah.
Um, it's so there's that. I don't think that you should necessarily set out to say I must, post X number of times a week. Consistency does matter though. So
Mm.
whether it's once or twice or whatever the cadence is that makes most sense for you, like consistency is not just useful to your audience, it's useful to you. You have a production function, it takes me this amount of time to create one good looking thing. Therefore, I can do X number of these in a week and it's useful. The other part is that most people track impressions, most people track follows, all the like the basic
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I think that is only one side of the data you should be tracking. You should also be tracking how long it takes you to create one good thing.
Hmm.
So if you take one of my LinkedIn graphics, how long does that take me to create? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it might have been an hour, hour and a half. Now it's like 10 minutes.
Jeez.
And so tracking your cycle time or how quickly you can put out great content is super useful because if you bring that down, you can do a lot more. Maybe it's not just social stuff, but I think most people just focus on the audience building and they don't focus on the content system, like the production function of content as well.
So I guess like for that to be possible, I guess you need to have access to a data warehouse that contains all this data, and then you need like a visualization tool
Yeah.
for you to kind of present the data within.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about? I'm super impressed, Peter, that you can build these graphs so fast and actually have something that people really like.
Yeah. It's you definitely need a system. I can walk through like what my system looks like right now, but I do also think that everyone's system is changing super quickly based on Claude and Codex and everything that you can use today. Here's what it used to look like. So, yes, you have to have access to the data warehouse. There's a lot of steps before that that are cleaning the data, making sure it's prepared, making sure it's ready to use, extraneous outliers, all this kind of stuff. And we have an amazing data science team that helps you with that. Once you get it into a useful place, then you have basically 3 steps. The first one is visualize it. I use Tableau for that, but I'm increasingly using Claude Code because it's fantastic. The analysis is usually really good. Claude Code charts are okay. They're getting better. They're, getting it to be exactly what I'm seeing in my head might be a little harder, but Tableau has been a fantastic design tool for me for a long time. So you've got a graph. It's a good looking graph. You take that chart and you put it into Figma or a design tool. And then you add all the stuff around it, the headline, the subhead, the URLs, the call outs, the stars, etc. You make it look and feel like it's coming from Carta or coming from me. So that's step 2. And then step 3 is the writing. What am I going to say about this? How does it fit into the conversation? Is it responding to stuff that I've already posted? Is it responding to, you know, data in the world, events that just happened, et cetera, et cetera? Probably a lot of the folks in the audience have already become content creators on LinkedIn or elsewhere. And that's candidly, the writing can sometimes be the hardest part. Um, but the, back and forth with the data, once you set that up, you can start pushing the production faster and faster and making sure that you can keep the quality bar high.
Oh, that's super nice, Peter, to hear about. I have on my wish list. I have like a dedicated resource that could do exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Just simply acquiring the like we have some thousand B2B customers and we have all their customer journeys. So we have a very rich data set as well, but it's oftentimes we have to go to the engineering team to help us write the query or kind of prepare the data well enough for us to get the data into a sheet at least, and then we can work out of the sheet. So there's basically nobody who's controlling whatever graphs you're showing them.
So this is
No
again, I
police
feel
that
I feel
don't.
super privileged about this. Like this is not an easy, if you're a marketer listening to this might not be your situation, and I sympathize. But no one tells me what to build. I don't have any limits on what I can build.
Yeah,
It's just like go and be out in the ecosystem and find the right things to do. And that
that's
level of autonomy is, I think, really important. Um, because it just allows you to respond to things much more quickly and to have like follow your own curiosity down the rabbit holes. There's
yeah,
questions about, when we're building big reports, how do we decide which data points are useful and not? It's like an experience and nuance thing. Like you kind of always know there's some basic stuff where you're like, every quarter, they are going to want to know how seed valuations change this quarter. It's
yeah,
pretty obvious. You're
yeah.
going to do it every time. There's less obvious stuff, which is like, hey, let's talk about the way that angel investors are changing their usage of safes, or let's talk about the way that seed is getting squeezed by mega funds and angels on the other side. Like there's like more sort of in-depth 201 conversations to have with the data. Those are the ones where you kind of got to know about it. You got to be hearing about it. You got to get asked the right question. And then the best stuff comes from the questions. So I think if there's one point on how to build things, I think many, many people, or what to build, which is sometimes people's biggest question, you can get really trapped in paralysis of just going back and forth about, is this right? Is this not right? Just put it out.
Mm,
Build a chart, put it out.
yeah,
People will comment below like, hey, you missed this. Hey, I would love to see this, but for my industry, whatever. Like so much of the good stuff comes from listening to the audience.
yeah. That's really interesting. Hmm. And then I really love that. So kind of you try out a few times a chart on the kind of the same topic, and that how do you know when you have something where it's good enough to make it become a newsletter or make it
Yeah.
become a podcast or a part of a larger report then?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a useful part to talk about the channels of insights because I think it's all like one system. So you start with a rented audience, a place to go. That's usually social. For me, that's LinkedIn and X. For you, it might be YouTube, etc. You just kind of pick a channel or two that you think this is going to work very well on. So you're consistently creating for that channel, but all of that attention and whatever, it's a very fleeting thing. You know, these people, yes, they might end up following you on LinkedIn, but they haven't opted into anything from your company yet. So you try to have pathways where they can get more and more information. So for us, that comes into three ways. One is the newsletter, two is the podcast, and three is virtual events, webinars, etc. Um, if you're getting a lot of value from this rented audience, you want to build a place on your website where they can go. So for us, it's carta.com/data. Everything that we have built is on that page. All the podcasts, all the major reports, the news, everything is in one single place. And so they can get a ton of value if they're excited about startup data. And they only have one place to go, and then they can subscribe, etc. Uh, that's the channel mix. And then from there, you can do a lot of private events, decks, earned media public. There's a whole host of other channels that you can think about. Um, there's, I think that people sometimes get, a little too, how do I say this? Almost precious about the owned audiences and the owned spaces. Like you should just be providing value there too. I can't tell you how many newsletters I have read from companies that are like just veiled pitches all the time. They're just ads. Like just
Yeah.
talk, again, this is back to the whole point of insights. Like just talk about your industry and talk about the cool and interesting things going on in it. You'll be surprised at how useful that can be to a lot of people. And then we can talk about the way to get reporters interested in this and like the way to get it out into the world a little bit more.
Yeah. Before we do that, then I would love to hear kind of what you're thinking on just like the actual posts, because like
Yeah.
we try to post quite a lot on LinkedIn as well, and we just released like a benchmark report where we really tried to do our best to make the visuals would be really appealing for the LinkedIn feed.
Yeah.
But do you have some sort of like formula that you kind of try to repeat in your team on graphs that where kind of you say this is going to do well when once we post it?
You can never be like perfectly sure that it's gonna do well. Sometimes you're like, damn, I put a lot of effort into that one and it just didn't
Yeah,
hit. That's a shame.
yeah,
And then sometimes the stuff that you build in 3 minutes is the stuff that gets a ton of attention. You don't really know. It's social. You can't really pick. However, yes, I do have I have a lot of thoughts on formatting charts and graphs and like
yeah.
making it good for the feed. I've posted hundreds and hundreds of these. The maybe three things. First, you should be utilizing all the space available to you. So like they need to be square formats. They need to be socially native. Don't post if you're just posting like slides from a deck, it's not going to do nearly as well. You're not utilizing the space correctly. Um, Second, you should have very clear headline, and the headline should not be what the chart says. Don't write the headline as in like four data points about blank, or you don't write the headline explaining what the data is. Write the headline explaining why the data matters. So instead of writing something like, this is data on capital from 2000 venture funds, you write, how much money do VCs have left?
You
Like,
have one here that I'm seeing on your page. Will your co-founder leave?
yeah,
If I'm
exactly.
a startup, I want to know know
The
the
data set, yeah, and the data set from that chart is like 1,800 startups on Carta that had this XYZ, two founders, blah, blah, blah. But I don't write that as the headline. The headline is, will your co-founder leave? Good. Great. Interesting question for a founder. All those kinds of things. Uh, the the then the key is like, how do you make your chart visually interesting? I think there's maybe 2 points on charting and data viz. You could get this is like I'm a complete fanatic about data viz. Like this is where I really nerd out on things. But
Yeah.
the number one thing that you can do to mess up a data viz is make it too complicated. Most people try to look smart in their data when most of the time bar charts are awesome, line charts are awesome. Just do the basic thing, make it clear and easy to understand, and then you can kind of ladder up into more complex stuff. But if you really go back and look through my charts, about half of them are just bar charts in thousands of different forms. And
Yeah.
that's okay. That's great. Like you can get a ton of attention for basic chart types. You don't need to do like complicated scatter plots and maps and all this kind of stuff all the time. I do them, of course, but the base home of a lot of these charts should be bars and lines and just make it really clear what you're talking about. And then we can get into the more sophisticated charting. If you don't have anyone, or if you're looking to hire somebody to do this for your company, it's great if they have chart experience, right? If they've built a ton of charts before, it definitely helps. But again, Claude's getting pretty damn good. Like
I'm
you should
gonna,
definitely be leveraging different AI tools to help you with visuals.
I'm gonna give the Claude a bit a shot to visualize. But you say you kind of sometimes you end up in Figma as well, trying to like
Yeah,
complete the image.
exactly. Yep. Yep. And there's a lot of like back and forth on chart types that you can do, and you can spend a lot of time trying to perfect things. Again, for me, I think it's much better to say, I'm going to give myself an hour, and then whatever I have at the end of the hour, I'm just going to put it out.
Yeah.
Time box it for yourself, and then just kind of get better within the time that you've given yourself there as a constraint.
How does the collaboration then with the rest of the like the org then does the go-to-market teams then utilize the charts?
Yeah.
Okay, do they do follow-ups on the people who engage with the post, or kind of how does that kind of connection to producing pipeline work?
Yeah. So maybe this is a contrarian point, but I don't want my sales team following up with someone who liked my post. That's
No,
not enough of a signal at all. Like
I get a lot of the AI SDR.
are annoyed by it. Yeah, exactly. If you like a LinkedIn post and then you get an email from someone that says, "I saw you liked this LinkedIn post," I am not going to buy from that person.
Go
That's just
away.
yeah, exactly. You're just like, stop watching my LinkedIn. Like,
Yeah.
quit it. What we do want is for insights to be really useful to the rest of the organization. So there's a ton of ways that happens, but this is perhaps why I think every company should have an insights team. Maybe not everyone, but a lot more of them do. Number one, if I never posted on LinkedIn, if I never put anything out in public, I would still be really valuable to Carta because I'm building things for the other parts of the organization.
Mm.
I'm building keynote decks for our CEO to go give talks on stages about specific startup topics. I'm building a deck for our business development team to take to law firms to explain to them what's going on with their clients. I'm building decks that go to accelerators that show, hey, you're a founder, you're raising a pre-seed round. Here's exactly the valuation caps you should be thinking about. We're effectively an internal content agency as well, where
Yeah.
we're building a ton of data-driven stuff for every part of the organization. So that's one. Two, we're just talking to customers all the time.
Yeah.
So we are feeding stuff back to our product teams where I'm actively helping our product teams build data products. Like that's an interesting loop. And then number three, and maybe the closest to the pipeline is, a lot of what we do is generate attention and interest in Carta data. And hopefully we help some founders make better decisions. And then you kind of lead them down. Okay, well, we're going to put a mid gate on our big report. So if you want the full thing, you have to fill out some information. Or we do, calls like this where we say, we'd love to review like what is going on in the state of seed. And we're going to have a great VC and a great lawyer on the call. And we're going to have a virtual event and bring hundreds of people together to talk about what's going on in seed rounds. All of that stuff is where you start kind of moving people down the funnel as opposed to just on social. Like, for instance, one of the biggest things on social is always, do you put a link to stuff in your post or not? I almost never do.
Yeah.
One, there's a URL that you can go to. You can't click
I like
it.
that one.
Yeah, you can't click it, but you can. I promise you, people will type it in if it's short enough. And then the second is like, it's kind of not the point. I think it's like yes, it's useful to link back to your own work, but most of the time, not always, most of the time, if you put a link in your social, it's going to decrease the number of people who see it.
Yeah, I don't want that.
So like, are you there for reach or are you there for attribution?
Yeah.
I'm on social for reach. I want this to be read by everyone across startups. That's the current point. Maybe
Mm.
that'll change in the future, but most of the time that's my North Star.
Are your marketing team also boosting your posts now and then?
Not really. But that's
There's
uh
there's a good tactics there where like LinkedIn allows you to do like a list of matched audiences, so you could have your kind of target
really.
account, and then you could force your posts in front of the target accounts as well.
Yeah, I should maybe we should be doing that more often. Yeah, they don't do a ton of boosting on mine. We boost other stuff, I'm sure, on the company account.
Yeah.
Also, maybe we should have mentioned this at the top. All of this work, it just does better if it's coming from a person rather
Mm.
than your company
Yeah.
account. So like pick somebody. Maybe it's your founder if they're interested in it.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of commenting, you have to be active in order to get the juice from it. But it shouldn't come from your company account really. It should come from a person.
Yeah. This and then kind of maybe can you talk just a little bit about this this classic marketing discipline of like when do you gate something, meaning hence hand over your email, or when do you keep it open? What's
Yeah.
the principles that you guys are running with here?
Yeah. The default principle for us is everything should be open. Um, that's the default principle. Where we go from there is to say if we're providing material non-public info, like stuff that no you can't get anywhere else in a big format, we're going to give most of it out for free and then we're going to reserve it. The other thing that we do is to say anytime that you want to share it, we want to like gate it at that point. So if you love this chart and you want to share it from the website, like as you go to export that or download the CSV, then we might gate something. But in general, like, and there's different opinions in Carta about this. I'm much more on the side of like everything should be open. And you should get the attribution in other ways. There's a couple questions around attribution in general. I just, I, re- I really don't care. This is again a privileged and maybe contrarian take. I don't care at all about tracking attribution from my social.
Yeah.
Like one, tracking the attribution necessarily decreases the reach. So I don't want to do that generally. Number two, I don't need to know whether or not this specific LinkedIn post drove you to the website. I just need to consistently produce great information and trust that it's working. And yeah, if you want to put like a thing at the end of the demo form that says, "How did you hear about us?" We did that for a while. LinkedIn was a Peter's LinkedIn was a very top channel. We just stopped doing that. It's like,
Mm.
that's not the point. We know it's working. What we want to do is find all the cool and interesting ways that we can do more of it. And I understand that is I'm very lucky to work for a company that kind of
I
works.
think more about it as kind of a function of how to take the awareness that you create and then extract pipeline out of it. So it's not so much as being credited as it is to, how do we then get people into a webinar that then allows our salespeople to send out some messaging if people like this webinar? Like it has to end up in revenue at some point for it to make sense, right?
Yeah. Does it? I mean,
Great. Let's hear.
here's here's the thing. Like, obviously, you don't want to spend time on things that are not useful. Like, that's an overall statement, right? There's only so much time that we have in the world. But again, it goes back to the consensus from you and your execs at the beginning. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this because you think it's going to be the biggest driver of leads? Because then I don't know if you should do it. If you're doing this because you want to cement yourself as the voice, the source of truth in your industry, then you do it. And there are advantages to being source of truth that do not show up in the pipeline numbers, at least immediately, but they only grow over a period of 6 to 9 to 12 to years down the line. So maybe that's the push on like, why are you doing it? Once you get to a point where people start referencing your data as like, this is canonical, this is what's going on in our industry, there are so many ways to use that. I can explain a couple of the channels, but like I think it's worth almost expecting nothing and then being very pleasantly surprised at how much you get out of it.
Something a funny thing that we've noticed is that we put out, let's say, benchmarks a couple of times per quarter or something like that.
Yep.
From LLMs, where we have been receiving the most traffic from LLMs, have been on these pages where we have put out proprietary data. So
Totally.
there's something about LLMs absolutely loving it when you put out proprietary data.
Yeah.
And then if you think about impacting pipeline, if LLMs continuously cite your company and sends traffic to these pages, then for sure you're gonna be producing a lot of value for your company. Have you experienced something similar, Peter?
100%. Yes. So this is a great part to talk about how your data gets in different places. So of course, AEO, GEO, LLM sourcing is a massive part. When people ask about startup valuations or how do I split equity amongst my co-founders and anything, like we're so often cited in all of those queries on that LLM side, which is awesome. The other thing is that the data itself, because it is evidence about the world, is very attractive to people writing about your industry, whether they're earned media, newsletters, substackers, YouTubers, whoever. So we run this play all the time where we're following 40 to 50 reporters in our space. Every time they post a story that could have used some Carta data, I just DM them and go, "Hey, loved this piece. Would love to talk to you the next time you're writing about this topic. We could have added this bit of evidence for you." You'd be stunned at how often that works. And now we get 6, 7, 8 mentions in earned media, from the Journal to the Financial Times to wherever, every week, every 2 weeks. That's a lovely little route back, and then that also helps with your AEO and GEO, and then you can do the same thing with newsletters, and it's just a flywheel. What you want, the goal of Insights is to be the ubiquitous source for startup data. So a ubiquity implies that other people are talking about your data, not just you.
Yeah.
And so being like a bit of a research arm for other people is also very useful, uh, you know, portion of my time.
That's a very nice and tangible play to kind of map the journalist or bloggers, as we called them 10 years ago, that writes about your industry,
Yeah.
and like follow the stories that they put out, and whenever you can help them, just kind of offer your insights.
Yeah. And then what you get is if you've helped one reporter with a couple stories, what happens is sometimes they just come to you before the story is even fully baked. They're like, "Hey, I'm kind of thinking about this topic. Like, what do you know about it?" And then you can do the education. You can like put your point of view into things. It's great. It's an awesome motion.
That's very interesting. So that's kind of you earlier you mentioned PR, so that would kind of probably be your main avenue for influencing media.
Yeah, that's it. Then you get Then there's the, like, the personal side of insights. I know there's some questions about how do I get senior executive buy-in into this. I can talk about that in a bit. Um, but the last kinda stage of the insights motion, so you have a social channel, you've got newsletter content, you've got virtual event content, you're helping all the internal teams use this data better. There's a lot of things going on. The last one is as you start, like, getting slightly more prominent or being well known for a thing like insights, you start getting invitations. Some of those invitations are to go speak at conferences. That's awesome. That's useful. Some of those, I think the more useful ones are, hey, there's a dinner coming up with 8 venture capitalists in San Francisco. Can we've got a seat for you if you want to come and do like a little data talk or like
Yeah.
something like the stuff that there's no sponsorships. You can't get into these places. You're just invited in if you've got useful information. That is so clutch. Like, again, you cannot sponsor these things.
Yeah.
But if you are a person who has useful info and thoughts about the industry for people, you just start getting invited to go places. So much of my role now is it's probably 50% of it is talking
Mm.
and traveling and like doing the sort of being a evangelist for Carta in these various places, and almost none of it is sponsored.
Yeah.
It takes a while, but if you get there, it's so nice. Just because then you're hearing behind the scenes all of the questions, all the stuff that they're really talking about.
Yeah.
That helps you be even better. So that's kind of like the final part of it.
That's super inspirational, Peter. And I think like a lot of times when you do content, I think that's a great way of explaining it, because a lot of times you do content, you only kind of see the tip of the iceberg
Yeah.
of how many doors is actually being opened without you ever being told that your graph circulated inside Goldman Sachs or inside JP Morgan or whatever.
Inside a bank, inside a WhatsApp group with founders, somebody screenshotted it and used it in their recent fundraise. Like I get
Yeah.
stories like that all the time. I can't track any of them, of course, but
No,
that I don't care to track them. Like the fact that they're happening is what I want. Like that's the whole goal.
that's fantastic. Maybe let's just do a little section on kind of pitfalls or what not to do,
Yeah,
because oftentimes that's a good way of like kind of getting the right focus. So,
sure.
so where can you go wrong if you want to start tell stories about data?
I think there's two things to watch out for. So the first is this concept of statistical significance. Um, Again, maybe a slightly contrarian take from me. It doesn't really matter. What you need to be is open and honest about the kind of data that you're working with and the universe that you're working in. So if you look on our charts, every single one of them has a data line in the subhead that says this came from X number of companies over these years in the US or whatever it is. Like it's every single one of them has one of those. You do not want to hide the ball on how much data you're working with. I mean, you know probably better than me. You read a marketing report and it seems cool and interesting. You get to the end of it and it's like, this was 40 survey responses over 2 years. And you're like, this doesn't matter to me. It's not useful. So
I
like,
actually hadn't noticed that on your graphs. I had to just zoom in, but it's true. It actually says on top here how many
yep,
companies in the sample.
yep, exactly. So, and I want to be upfront every single time about that.
Yeah.
No one is going to you'll get pushback and say like, I don't think your data is representative for X, Y, and Z reason. That's a good thing.
Mm.
Engage with those pushbacks.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I think it is, but like, let's talk about it. What are you seeing? What other data can you bring to the conversation? All those kinds of things are useful. So just don't try to hide the ball on the data that you're working with. Be very upfront about it is the first kind of pitfall. The second pitfall that I would say is, how do I put this? Uh, it it's easy as much as possible. You want to come off as an impartial observer of your industry and not be like, I don't know if it's that useful for the insights person to like start little controversies with the data. You want to say what the data is saying and be honest about it, but there's no need to like push it into people's faces or like take one side of the argument and be like everyone who thinks differently is an idiot and here's the reason why and here's the numbers. It's just like what you are is you think of yourself as this like kind of high level researcher on this topic that everyone is super interested in. You don't want that researcher to just be um flagrantly for one side or the other, you know? Just be honest about what the data is showing and just kind of let other people take the really significant stances. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean you need to be bland in what you're writing, but you don't need to be like everyone who doesn't think the way I think sucks.
Yeah. Cool. Let's Marilyn has a good question here for us to kind of finish out on.
Mm.
So this is great. I want to do it, but how do I actually get buy-in from senior executives? What is the
So
story that's needed to be told there?
here's the way I would do it. One, you now have some people to point to. So it's not just me. This is like starting to be a bit of a wave of head of insights. Oftentimes you'll at bigger places, they'll be called chief economists or like economic researchers or people like that. It's like Ara at Ramp is a fantastic one. Jason Saltzman at CB Insights is a fantastic one. There's like Lauren, I can't remember her last name, but she just joined Deal to do this exact work for Deal to show like equity across the world. There's a ton of Mercury is hiring one of these people, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a bit of a wave. So you're like kind of
Those you mentioned there, they produce graphs just like you.
Yep, almost all of them do exactly like this. They also do different things, you know? Some of them have leaned more into, like, YouTube. Aura has built, like, data products on marketing pages at Ramp that are really cool. There's a lot of ways to do it. So, first off, you're not coming in completely cold, like, point to some examples. Second, you be open and honest with your leadership about how long this is gonna take. Don't overpromise.
Mm, yeah,
Do not be like, "In the first month, we're gonna get this many leads from this." You
yeah.
say, Mr. and Mrs. CEO, would it be useful for our company to be the source of truth in our industry? Most of them will say yes.
Mm,
Here's one way we can get there. I'd like to start an insights program that produces consistent, valuable information for our ecosystem. Um, how I'm going to do that is we have a data asset. I'm going to work with our data team to aggregate and anonymize it. I'm going to build charts and graphs that illustrate what's going on, and I'm going to be a writer out in the world.
yeah.
And we think that that content stream will get our brand awareness up amongst the people that we care about, and they'll think of us as a trusted authority on the space. That's kind of it. The other thing that you can say is this work will be very helpful to you, the executive team, as you go out and talk about our industry. It'll be very helpful to our salespeople as they engage with individual prospects. It'll be helpful to everybody else, even if the external content doesn't get as many likes and impressions and et cetera as we hope.
Yeah.
Then you stop and see what their reaction to that pitch is. The last point that you'll have to make to Marilyn's question is, who is it? Who is putting this content out? Is it Marilyn? Is it Stefan? Is it the CEO? Who is the person? Because again, I guess you could do this motion from a company account, but it really works much better from a person. So you kind of got to figure that out first and then get everyone aligned.
Do you think you need to select just one person at the company, or is it fine multiple people at the company?
Multiple people can be great, actually. Multiple people can be great. It dilutes it a little bit, but I think multiple people, especially if they have their own unique angles on it, that can be super helpful. And then you're a little bit more of an engine supporting more public faces.
Mm,
That can be awesome. But I do think it has to be from people, not
yeah,
from companies.
yeah. No, I completely agree. It's so much more personality to it. Okay, we're almost done, Peter. I'm curious to hear, do you have any exciting projects on data visualization, data storytelling coming up this year that deserves a shout out?
So many. Here's where I think the future of this is. So the content streams to date have been build graphics and maybe videos for social, write newsletters, build virtual events. It's all kind of a content system that works together. The additional layer, the thing that we're starting to build now and we'll have hopefully out pretty soon, is an interactive home for all of this on the web. So we will soon you'll be able to go to carta.com/data and actually play with all of the charts that we've built. So filter them, reimagine them, hopefully use LLMs to ask questions of the data yourself in interesting ways. There's a little bit of guardrails we got to put on that to make sure that privacy is restricted and all that kind of stuff. But imagine you come to a website around startups and you're like, what are the seed valuations for my industry over the past 2 years? And it just charts it for you.
Yeah.
Like that is where this is going. So hopefully we'll be able to build this, like what we want is to have you bookmark this as the home of startup data. That's coming very soon.
It's like almost like I don't know if I'm butchering the technical explanation, but like an MCP for startup data. Like
Exactly.
people,
We at Carta, we just released an MCP for our fund clients so they can pull all the data directly from our system and play with it in Claude. So it's coming for sure. It's just like there's so much cool and interesting stuff to build when you have an asset that's worth exploring.
yeah. Well, you've definitely motivated me to go ask for more budget to a hire that can work with this full time. And Peter, thank you so much for your time. Where do you
Absolutely.
want people to take a look? Where do you want people to follow?
I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn very easily. And then, but if you want like all of the big stuff that we've created, it's carta.com/data is where you want to go.
That is a small but very important thing to just have something that is so easy to kind of spell out and put into a
It was an
browser.
argument. We need like the URL needs to be as short as possible. Yeah.
That makes too much sense.
100%.
Cool. Thank you everybody for listening to me and Peter. If you agree or disagree strongly with what we've said, please do write it in the comments, and do subscribe to our podcast. That would be very nice as well. Thank you so much for your time, guys. And Peter, fantastic. I loved hearing about it.
Cheers, Stefan. Great to meet you.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.